All right, let's dive into something that's absolutely critical for anyone operating in the cloud: security policies. Seriously, think of these as the essential blueprint for protecting your organization's most important stuff online. We're going to decode what they are and why they matter so much.
And look, the stakes here are incredibly high. This quote really gets right to the heart of it. We're not talking about a small technical glitch. A single breach can lead to a total loss of trust, not to mention fines that can be absolutely crippling. This is precisely why getting your cloud security right from the ground up is something you just can't afford to get wrong.
So, with that level of risk hanging over your head, where do you even begin? Well, it all starts with building a strong foundation. And that foundation, it's your cloud security policies. They really are your first and most important line of defense.
So what is a cloud security policy really? Simply put, it's your company's internal rulebook for the cloud. It's a set of guidelines that you create for your team that spells out exactly how everyone should operate. It's the document that makes sure every single security decision lines up with your company's bigger goals. Okay, now here's where things can get a little fuzzy for a lot of people. You hear the words policies and standards thrown around, sometimes like they mean the same thing. But they don't. They're fundamentally different, and knowing that difference is absolutely crucial.
Let's break it down. Policies are internal. You create them in-house, and they're completely customized to how your business works. Standards, on the other hand, are external. They're the mandatory rules set by outside bodies. Think HIPAA for healthcare, or ISO for, well, a ton of industries. So here's the key takeaway. Your internal policies are the specific actions you take to make sure you're meeting those big, mandatory external standards.
All right, so you're ready to start building that internal rulebook. That's great, but what actually needs to go inside? A really effective policy isn't just one rule. It's a complete document made up of a few core essential parts.
A really solid policy is built on these 6 pillars. First, you've got purpose and scope. What are you protecting and who does this apply to? Simple enough. Then, roles. Who's responsible for what? You need to be crystal clear. Next is data classification, so you know what's super sensitive versus what's not. And that leads right into data encryption, which defines how you protect it. And then, for when things go wrong, you need an incident response plan. And finally, a compliance section to prove you're meeting all the required standards.
Now that we know the building blocks, let's talk about the actual policies themselves. We're going to walk through 6 of the most essential ones that really every organization should have. Think of this as your starting playbook for solid security. These 6 policies don't work in isolation. They all fit together to create this comprehensive shield around your entire cloud environment. So let's take a look at each one.
First up, the data protection policy. This is really the bedrock. It's the policy that dictates how you classify your data. Is it public, internal, or top secret? And then it sets the exact rules for how you store and encrypt that data based on its sensitivity level.
Next, you have to answer the question, who gets to see what? That's your access control policy. This is all about implementing the principle of least privilege, which is a fancy way of saying people only get access to the information and tools that are absolutely necessary for their job. It's a simple idea that massively reduces your risk. Let's be real. Security incidents are gonna happen. It's not a matter of if, but when. Your incident response policy is your battle plan for that moment. It lays out the precise steps for detecting a threat, containing the damage, and getting back on your feet as fast as possible. It turns chaos into a clear, managed process. How do you really know someone is who they say they are online? That's where your identity and authentication policy comes in. It sets the rules for verifying identities, requiring things like multi-factor authentication before anyone can touch your critical systems. Your data is always on the move, zipping between servers and users. A network security policy is what protects it while it's in transit. This is where you lay down the law on things like firewalls, VPNs, and other measures to keep your network connections locked down and secure. And finally, we have disaster recovery. Now, this goes way beyond a single cyber incident. We're talking about the big stuff, a massive ransomware attack, a fire, a hurricane. This policy is the master plan that ensures you can get your services back online quickly with reliable backups and a clear, well-tested plan of action. Okay, so writing these documents is one huge step, but making them a real active part of your defense is a whole other ballgame. So, how do you actually bring these policies to life and make sure they don't just sit on a digital shelf collecting dust? Here are some of the best ways to make your policies stick. First, keep the language simple and clear, no confusing jargon. Get everyone involved, from IT to legal, so they have a stake in it.
And try to tie your policies to real-world numbers you can track. But honestly, the most critical piece of advice here is that second point: explain the why. When people understand the reason behind a rule, they're so much more likely to follow and even champion it.
And that really brings us to the single most important takeaway from all of this. Your security policy is not a set it and forget it kind of thing. The world of cyber threats is changing constantly, with new risks popping up all the time. Your policies have to be living documents, things you review, test, and update all the time if you want them to actually protect you. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. Is your cloud security policy a living, breathing part of your defense? Or is it just sitting somewhere collecting digital dust? Because honestly, the answer to that question could make all the difference.